Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm bringing you a fun video using the July Faith Art Box, and I thought this would be fun to show you a neat trick with watercolors. So I was kind of inspired by some of these stamps and stickers in this set, and it led me to Matthew chapter 5 verses 13 through 16, where it talks about being the light of the world and salt of the earth, and it just really inspired me. So you can see here that I have already journaled this verse actually over the verse, but I'm going to go ahead and journal it again on the left hand side, and it's going to be just fine. So I'm going to be using a lot of water with this technique. So I'm going to be putting some paper towel behind my page, and I'm going to work on the background a little bit before I start using the kit, so I'll kind of take you through the steps here. But I was really inspired with the mention of salt. I thought it'd be fun to use some salt with watercolors. So I have here my Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolors and some kosher salt. You're wanting a coarse salt. The more coarse, the better. I probably could have gone even more coarse if I could have found it at Target, but they didn't have it, so this worked just fine. And for your watercolors, you're going to want to use watercolors that are a little bit thicker and much more pigmented. So your cheapy, like Artist Loft watercolors may not work as well with this as the nicer watercolors. And that's me pulling a border collie hair out of my water. So I'm applying just some plain water to my page. I'm getting it very, very soaking wet, and then I'm dropping in color. I've chose to use this Adorn It brush today, a water brush, because I want to keep this page very wet while I'm working on it, and so this just has kind of a constant flow of water coming out of the brush tip there, and that way it stays wet until I'm ready to put the salt on. If your watercolor dries, it's not going to work when you put the salt on it. You want to make sure it's wet. So I've picked some colors that kind of match the colors in the kit with those aquas and kind of mint colors, and I'm just randomly dropping that on the page. Again, you're wanting to have a good amount of color on the page. If you do this with light yellows and things like that, it may not have the same result. It'll still work, you just won't be able to see it as noticeably as you would with darker colors like this really deep teal. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I'm just going over and adding more color where I think it needs it. And as it starts kind of running into my margin, I'm just using my paper towel there to pick up anything that looks like it's about to run all the way into the margin. I did prop the right-hand side of my Bible up just to kind of flatten out this page even more, so I'm not having to fight. Like I said, there is a lot of water on this page, but it's okay. My page survives, I promise. So now that I've got the color how I want it, now we can go ahead and add the salt. So I'm going to go ahead and shake it into my hand and then pinch it onto the page. And I'm not doing an even coating. I'm kind of doing some little clumped up areas of salt and just putting it on there. I'm not worried about you don't have a lot of control over what the final look of this is, so if you are a perfectionist, this may not be the technique for you, but I had a lot of fun with it. And so I know it's kind of a loose way of incorporating being the salt of the earth, but I thought it was fun. I will remember this verse every time I see that page, and that's what's important. So you want to let that air dry. So I've gone ahead and set it aside. And in the meantime, I'm going to work on the rest of the elements. So I have this manila tag here, and I'm going to ink it up with some Abandoned Coral Distress ink. This color matches beautifully with that coral color in the kit this month. And so I'm just using my ink blending tool to ink this up, and I'm concentrating the color more at the bottom of the tag and then blending it up towards the top, so I have a little bit of a gradient effect here. I did go ahead and just grab some scrap paper to keep my fingerprints out of it. I'm adding a lot of ink towards the bottom there, and so it's really wet, and I don't want to get my fingerprints in there at all. So I'm just going to get this till it's good and blended. And it's kind of hard to do because it's a cheaper cardstock that this is made out of, and so I kind of have to work at it a little bit. But one thing about distress inks is once they're dry, they blend a little bit better. So you can see this piece is now completely dry, and I'm going to go ahead and do some stamping. So I love this stamp set. This kit I'm telling you, every month I'm like, this is amazing, and then it's even cuter. So I'm going to pick out the stamps that say Shine Your Light. And one thing I like about the Creative Retreat stamps is that they're kind of cut with straight edges a little bit, and so they're much easier to line up on my block with the grids, and I can make sure that everything is straight. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that on my block. And then I'm going to be stamping with some Versamark ink to do some heat embossing, and this time I remembered to use my EK Success powder tool first. So I'm going to spread that all over this piece, especially with distress inks. They are going to grab onto embossing powder, and so if I hadn't done that beforehand, I may end up with embossing powder all over this piece and it would be a mess. So by spreading that powder on there first, now the embossing powder will only stick to where the stamping is. So I went ahead and inked this up with the Versamark ink. That is a clear sticky ink. And I didn't prep my stamp. It's the first time I've stamped with it, so I just made sure to really press it down and get it on there good. Now I'm going to be using some Ranger Platinum embossing powder, I believe it is. I'll link it down below. This stuff is gorgeous. It is, oh my gosh, it is like my favorite embossing powder. I haven't used it maybe but one other time in a very small stamping, and it's beautiful. So I went ahead and dumped off all the excess, and then for embossing powder you do have to heat set it. So I have my heat tool there, I let it get good and hot, and then I'm going to take it to the embossing, and you can see it transform right there. So this embossing powder will start to turn shiny, and that's how you know that it is melted. I'm just going to do that for all of it there, and then I'm going to hold it up here in a second. You can see it is just this really antiqued metal look. It's beautiful. Here are the enamel pieces. These are the subscriber exclusives, and they are also available in the shop for purchase separately. I'm going to need to order these in like boatloads. I had to hold myself back from using more of them. They're amazing. So now we're back. It's been about 2 hours since I've set this aside. I went ahead and did some other editing and things like that, and now I've come back to it. I start to wipe it and realize it's not 100% dry in places, so I do go ahead and just pull out my heat tool, but you want to be careful when heating it that you don't stick the salt to the page. But now that it's dry, I can go ahead and lightly rub my finger, and this is real time, so I'm not being overly cautious with the page. I am being a little bit firm, but just be careful. You don't want to tear your Bible page. And I did notice even after rubbing all of the salt off, it did still have a little bit of a grainy texture, so if that bothers you, then this isn't for you. I don't know that that same thing would happen with a more coarse like rock salt. I don't know if it's maybe just because I was using a little bit finer of a salt. I'm not sure, but I wasn't prepared. I didn't test this ahead of time. This is me winging it the first time, and you're seeing it, so luckily it worked out. So I'm just going to rub all that off, and as it rubs away, you can see it's left this really fun kind of splotchy texture, and so that salt actually bleached out the watercolor in areas. I think it's just amazing. I love this texture it gives. So I went ahead and brushed all that salt off. It took a little bit. I went ahead and went off camera and got all of it off. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in some journaling. I first pull out my Uniball Signo broad white gel pen, but I end up not loving this, and I come back in and change it in a minute here. But for now, I'm just spelling out using the stickers. It says, "We are called to shine the light and be the salt of the earth." And so, again, I love these little tile alphas. I use these all the time in my journaling. I love the Tim Holtz ones, so I'm super glad that Creative Retreat has similar ones in fun colors because they are great for adding journaling in the margin. So now here I'm drying my white gel pen because I'm going to go back in with just a ballpoint black pen. I didn't really love the white pen and didn't think it was standing out enough, so I'm going to go over that again. And then I'll go ahead and take a micro-tipped ball pen and go around all my stickers. And this is something I always do. This is nothing new for me if you've seen any of my videos. There I had where the pen got kind of crazy, so I just took my white gel pen to cover that up a little bit. Wrote out the verse, and I'll go ahead and attach that tag with one of the ribbon clippies from the kit, and that is it for this page. I really hope that you will give this technique a try. I had a lot of fun with it. Be sure to leave any comments down below if you have any questions about the technique or what I did today. Subscribe to this channel if you're not already subscribed, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.